All right, welcome to the review video for Ezekiel class, quiz number 6, our last quiz. So we're excited about that. Let me first go by telling you what the quiz will look like, and then we'll go over some of the content that's on the quiz there. The first page of the quiz is short answer questions. And so, once again, not too easy on the short answer, so I hope you'll use this review video several times. The next section is a matching section, matching different names of places, dealing with Gog and Magog, with some of the definitions that we gave. And so that is kind of what we're looking at for the quiz. All right, here are some content of the quiz. The quiz starts with Ezekiel chapter 33 and goes all the way through Ezekiel chapter 38, where we stopped with Gog and Magog there. And Ezekiel 33, of course, we talked about the watchman, and we said the watchman, his duty was twofold. First of all, he was to give warning, and secondly, he was to give the truth. And that's what we ought to be as watchmen as well. We also mentioned the fact that if the watchman did not give warning, that he would be responsible for the death of people. The blood would be on his hands, and so we mentioned that. We mentioned the fact that during this prophecy of the watchman, Ezekiel's prophecy was confirmed. After 7 years of preaching to the people that Jerusalem would be destroyed, there was a person who escaped the destruction of Jerusalem that went to Babylon and said that Jerusalem was destroyed. And so that is how God confirmed Ezekiel's message there. Then we mentioned Ezekiel 34, the prophecy against the shepherds. And we mentioned the fact, of course, the shepherds were the religious leaders of that day, the prophets and the priests and all those folks. And God mentioned several things that these false priests and false prophets were doing to his flock, to his sheep. He mentioned the fact that they were feeding themselves and not feeding the flock. He mentioned that they weren't helping the diseased. He mentioned that they weren't seeking out those that were lost or driven away. And he mentioned the fact that they ruled with force and cruelty. And of course, we mentioned as we serve in ministry, we shouldn't be guilty of any of those things. Of course, Jesus is the good shepherd. And we mentioned that God said of his nation Israel that he would bring his sheep back, and they were his sheep. He also had a little hint of the millennial kingdom when he mentioned the fact that David would be prince over Israel under God, of course, who will be king. And we believe that David will be, you might say, the king of Israel or the prince of Israel during the millennial kingdom. We also mentioned some prophecies against Edom. And of course, this dealt kind of with a little bit more of what God had to say about Edom. We mentioned another name for Edom, which is Edomia, which is the southern part of Judah that the Edomites took from Israel after their land was taken. And so you definitely want to know about that. And then we jumped into the Valley of Dry Bones. And we mentioned that in that Valley of Dry Bones, there were a couple of characteristics that God gave of these bones. First of all, there was many bones. These bones were not buried, so they were, you might say, in a state of disgrace or shame. And they were very dry. And of course, we mentioned that the dry bones dealt with the nation of Israel, that it was dead. We mentioned that God, of course, told Ezekiel, prophesy to these bones, and he asked Ezekiel, can these bones live? And when Ezekiel began preaching the bones started coming together. And they kind of came together in different steps. First, they were assembled together, and then the Bible says that flesh and sinew came on them, or you might say skin covered the bones. And then eventually, the breath of life was breathed into them, and they became living. We mentioned the fact that those steps involve the way Israel would be brought back to life. Today, we see the nation of Israel assembled together. We see them, you might say, in a state of flesh on them, but no spirit, no life. And it's not until, of course, after the tribulation and the millennial kingdom when God will breathe life back into the nation of Israel. We mentioned the fact that there was also in the Valley of Dry Bones a prophecy about 2 sticks. God told him, write the name of Judah on one stick and write the name of Ephraim on another stick and join the two together. We mentioned, of course, that's a prophecy that all 12 tribes will be joined together, and Israel someday will be one nation again. Of course, we've seen that prophesied fulfilled 1948 in Israel. Then we talked about Gog and Magog, and we spent quite a bit of time on this. And there's just several different names that we mentioned, and kind of what is believed to be the meaning of them. Of course, Gog is the ruler, and he apparently is the ruler of the northern kingdom. Sometimes he's called the king of the north. And we mentioned that he rules over the land of Magog. Of course, Josephus said that Magog is the land that the Scythians owned, which was pre, you might say, Russia days. We mentioned the Hebrew word Rosh is the word chief prince found in that passage as well, which has kind of a linguistic similarity to the word rush or Russia. We mentioned Meshach, very nearly resembles the word Moscow, and Tubal is possibly Tobolsk, which were the two capitals, the eastern capital of the Soviet Union and the western capital of the Soviet Union. And once again, we're not sure about those things, but many Bible commentators believe that is the case. We mentioned, of course, some of the other places that were mentioned in the text. Persia, which is modern-day Iran. Ethiopia, which is found in Africa, although there's some Bible commentators that believe that Saudi Arabia, there was an Ethiopia in Saudi Arabia as well. Of course, Libya in northern Africa. Gomer, which is related to Germany. And Togarmah, which many believe is Armenia or possibly Turkey. We mentioned the fact that the book of Daniel tells us that there will be an invasion, a checking of the power of the Antichrist. And it appears that there are three different powers that do try to stop him. And that is the king from the north, which would be Gog, the king from the south, which is the Egyptian powers or the African powers, Libya and Ethiopia. And then, of course, the book of Revelation tells us the kings of the east come through as well and check those powers. And so that is kind of a conclusion there of our review video. Hopefully you will study this and do very well. We'll see you Thursday.